Good morning, dear friends. Welcome to the Conscious Living Spiritist Group. We hope everyone is well and your families are also well. Would like to do a little technology check for those who are online with us. Juan or Mary, please do let me know if you can hear and see me well. As usual, we'll start with our initial reading. So today we'll do a quick reading from the book Living Spring from Francisco Cândido Xavier and Emmanuel, and it's a very deep reading. At least it was very deep for me, and I hope you enjoy the reflections. And we'll go for initial prayer, and right after we have our dear friend and sister Andreia Marshall with an important message for us as well. And the title of her lecture is Empty Lives. So great reflections as well. Thanks, Mackenzie, Mary, and everyone for confirming. Much appreciated. So with that said, let's get into the lesson, Living Spring. And to those joining us right now, welcome. And the lesson is the number 89, On Our Journey. And it is from the book of Matthew 10:51, when Jesus asked, "What would you like me to do for you?" Each student has a lesson to learn. Each worker has been entrusted with a task. Each vase has its usefulness. Each struggler has an ordeal to endure. Thus, each of us has our own individual testimony in the road of life. We often fail at our commitments and thus greatly increase our debts. Yet, in our redemptive endeavor, we beg the Lord for his mercy, compassion, and help. The question the Master asks of the blind man from Jericho is highly meaningful, however. What would you like me to do for you? This question shows us that the beggar's delicate position was in line with the imperatives of the law. Nothing happens in the absence of the divine principles. The blind Bartimaeus knew how to respond to Jesus' questions and asked to be able to see. Nevertheless, how many people pray for access to the Savior's presence, but when asked by him, they answer it in their own detriment? Let us remember that sometimes we may have to lose our earthly home in order to learn the way to our heavenly home. On many occasions, we are abandoned by those we love the most so that we may return to the divine bonds. And then there are times when the wounds of the body are called to heal those of the spirit. And there are situations in which paralysis teaches how precious being able to move is. It is natural for us to ask for the Master's help in our afflictions and difficulties. Meanwhile, let us not forget to work for the good on the most painful passages of rectification and ascension, convinced that we invariably find ourselves in the most just, beneficial, and deserved opportunity of work, and that maybe, for the time being, we do not know how to choose anything better. And with this beautiful message, we would like to invite everyone for our initial prayer. You may close your eyes if you choose. And we invite everyone in a united effort to bring our minds and our hearts to the present moment, in connecting with God, our Creator, with the good spirits around us. We would like to express our gratitude, Father, for this day, for the life that we have, for the assistance that we all receive from our protector spirits or guardian angels, anonymously, in silence. We're grateful for the inspiration we received to gather these brief moments this morning. And we ask, please help each of us to absorb the most of the divine messages that we are receiving. Help us to reflect deep in our hearts on what we truly need the most, so that we ask wisely for what is the most beneficial to us in the difficult moments that we all have in our lives. Please, dear Father, help our family members that may or may not be with us. Help our dear friends who were not able to join us this morning. And please inspire our friend and sister Andreia, so that she may express the lessons that she prepared with great care and love to each of us. Please bless our humble assembly, and we ask your permission to begin. Thank you, and so be it. For those who are joining us right now, welcome, and I am very happy to bring you and introduce our dear friend Andreia. Good morning, Andreia.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning, Marcos.
Wishing you a blessed lecture.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. I see you, I see your name. We are very excited to be here this morning, not only to do our live presentation for Sunday morning, but also to share very exciting news that we actually are assisting Layout Publisher in releasing a new title today. And as you notice, this is our topic this morning right here. Empty Lives. And Empty Lives is a title that was inspired, if you will, in trying to present to you the new title that is now readily available from Layout Published, which was a book that was channeled, received last year, actually the year before, 2020, in the midst of a pandemic by the medium Divaldo Pereira Franco and the spirit author Joana de Angelis. So we are very excited to be able to present this title, which is composed of 30 messages in which Joana de Angelis addresses several topics for us to reflect upon. And I just took one of her many powerful statements in this book, in which she states that we were reborn to be happy and to place markers of joy along the road we travel, even if the circumstances are not favorable at the moment. So it's really interesting, this book, when it was released, because it's sort of, if we really had years to hear, kind of made us reflect upon the importance that we were placing on time and how we were utilizing our time, especially when we were invited to go back home. As we know, we had to stay indoors, isolated with our immediate family members, those that we lived with. Even if we were alone, we were invited to stay home, isolate. And it seems as if we sort of were in question as to what the time was trying to tell us, what the pandemic was trying to tell us. And I don't need to go through all of that again, right? Because here we are, and we already have vaccines. A lot of people have already caught COVID. We are no longer isolating, although the dangers are still here. We don't need to go back on that. But I just wanted to point out that this book was released in Portuguese originally in the midst of 2020, in the middle of a pandemic. And here it is, Empty Lives. It is an amazing, amazing title, and I am happy to be presenting here today this book. Aside with that, we wanted to open with two examples from this other amazing book that we have available called Heaven and Hell. If you are new to Spiritism and you're catching this after our live presentation, we ask that you leave your comments or your questions. We'll do our best to come back and answer them if we are no longer connected. But this book right here, in my opinion, when we embark in the reading of the Spiritist codification, is the one that comes and tells us how to walk the talk, if you will. So part 2 of this book is filled with chapters about the different states of different spirits in the spirit realm after their discarnation, meaning after their physical death. And it is really interesting because they have suffering spirits, such as this one that I'm bringing. They have spirits who committed suicide. They have hardened spirits. They have spirits in the average condition. They have the happy order spirits that come to tell us about how much it was worth it to go through life and do what Joanna DeAngelis stated right here, to place markers of joy, even if there were difficulties that we encounter along the way, because we live in a world of trials and expiations. But this is a book right here that comes with spirits who basically put forth their very best in trying to portray, to show us what we can expect in the spirit world based on how we lived. So basically saying, in order to die well, you have to live well, because we continue being who we are after we pass on. Our qualities, our virtues, our frailties, our vices, all of it we carry with us in this empty suitcase, or we can call it the hard drive, our spirit, our perispirit. So today we're going to focus on two spirits specifically. Michel Auguste, who provided the Parisian Society, the Spirit Parisian Society, with a communication, actually several communication, but starting with the one in March of 1863, and then Claire, which is another spirit in the very same category of suffering spirits, which communicated in 1861. Okay, so we're going to begin with Michel Auguste. And the reason why I'm doing this is because it is important that we start understanding, having a view of those that have already departed, and basically give us keys, if we will, or a little detail on what led them to their suffering. And remembering that our title today is Empty Lives. Okay, so Michel Auguste, he was a rich young man. He was what they called a bon vivant, who enjoyed the aspect of the material life at large. I mean, he was, we could consider him, whomever you think about, I'm not going to name anyone in as far as influencers go. He was living life like that, like at large, very materialistic. He was very intelligent. He was well liked because people liked him for his fortune, but he was very indifferent towards the serious matters pertaining to life, and that was his characteristic trait. He was non-threatening, right? He wasn't bad. He was good. He wasn't bad, but he didn't really win any hearts of his party companions because of a quality of good deeds, but rather of being a man of the world. Not a man in the world, but of the world. And we're going to try to understand this a little bit later on. What does it mean to be of the world as opposed to in the world, right? With a teaching that came long ago from our Master Jesus. So he died as a result from a fall from his carriage during a ride. And we have to remember, back then there were no cars. There was a carriage, and he fell from it and he died. And a few days later, a medium who had known him directly, was the one who channeled him in the Parisian society and gave the following communication and stating. He would say, I have only just managed to separate from my body, and it is difficult for me to speak to you. Now, unfortunately, I don't have a lot of time to go on and explain why he had such a hard time and what is it that causes such difficulty for the spirit to disengage from the physical body. But I can go ahead and summarize that whenever we live exclusively for matters of the world, this in itself is a cause of difficulty for the spirit to disengage from the physical body. And he will say, the terrible fall that caused the death of my body put my spirit in a great state of confusion. I am anxious as to what will become of me, and such uncertainty is cruel. The dreadful suffering my body experiences nothing compared to the confusion I find myself in. He comes a few days later, or actually, a few days later, like 2 weeks later, and he says, I already came to you once, but I could only speak with difficulty. I am still in great pain right now as I am communicating with you. So, March 18th is the date he said this. The very first communication came on March 8th. And then in May, a few months later, he comes and he says, I have been waiting for you. I see how contrary my life was to what it should have been. So he's had enough time in the spirit world to reflect upon his life and about what should have been and wasn't. And he says, I see the wrongs I committed. I was useless. I was a useless being while in the world. I didn't make any good use of my faculties. My wealth only served to satisfy my passions, my taste for luxury, and my vanity. I only thought about the pleasures of the body and not that of the soul. So this is a communication that is really interesting here, because a lot of times we will say, my goodness, I wish I was wealthy. I wish I had riches. I wish I had the ability to have thousands and thousands of followers on Instagram or Facebook or whatever it is. But we don't consider the actual commitment or responsibilities, spiritually speaking, that comes with such investments of the spirit, because those are investments made on our behalf for our progress. And here's Michelle basically a couple of months later saying, now I realize why I was suffering and what I should have done. And one of the suffering aspects in the spirit plane is the not being able to go back and make things differently. And we don't need to say that we are oblivious to what this means, because how many of us have stated this in the past? My God, if I could go back, a few years, I would do things differently. Because we have had time to reflect. We have had time to consider the possibilities, and we have matured, hopefully. So a lot of times we will catch ourselves saying exactly that. And then the other example is Claire. Now, Claire here, as we can see, she comes in the Parisian society in 1861. It is a spirit who was furnished an opportunity to communicate through a medium, also who had known her while she was alive. And this medium also knew about her conduct, like her character. And she understood a lot in that moment in which she was channeling the spirit, that the fully justify type of torment that the spirit was feeling at that moment. And so one of the things that the Parisian society expressed to us is the fact that she was also dominated by an exaggerated sense of pride and self-centeredness. She only thought about herself. So she starts her communication stating, I am here, the miserable Claire. What would you like for me to tell you? And then she goes on, and in another communication, she says, my misery increases every day. It increases on my grasp of eternity, which develops within me. Oh, misery, how much I curse you. You guilty times, times of selfishness, oblivion, when I forgot all the charity, all the devotion, and only thought about my own welfare. So she's fully aware of whom she was and how she led her existence. And then she goes on to say, cursed be human interests. I wither away from the incessant regret for the time that I wasted. What can I tell those who are listening to me? Well, this is what I say: watch yourselves constantly. Love others more than you love yourself. Don't delay on your progress on the path of the good. Don't pamper your body at the expense of your soul. Watch yourselves, just as the Savior preached to his disciples. Don't thank me for the counsels. My spirit conceived them, but my heart never listened. So here is the aspect of knowing intellectually, but not really internalizing it as to be able to feel deep in the heart and having a righteous, a good conduct in one's existence. Because she says, my spirit conceived the teachings that Jesus preached to the disciples, but my heart never listened. So St. Louis comes to guide us in understanding a little bit about her communication. And he says, this picture is completely true, and by no means it is an exaggeration. You might ask, what did this woman do that was so miserable, that was so bad? Did she commit any horrible crime? Did she rob or murder anyone? Because this is one of the mistakes that we make, right? We think that if I am not robbing anyone, if I am not murdering anyone, if I am living my life, even being self-centered or selfish, there's really no reason for that amount of suffering, right? He says she did nothing against human justice. On the contrary, she enjoyed what you might call earthly happiness. She had beauty, fortune, pleasure, praise. Everything smiled on her. She lacked nothing. On seeing her, we would say, what a fortunate woman. And we would envy her luck. So what did she do? So St. Louis answers, she was self-centered. She had everything except a good heart. She broke no human laws. She broke God's laws because she forgot the very first virtue, which is to be charitable. She loved only herself, and now no one loves her. And one of the great miseries, I mean, she comes and she says, I am so damned that I don't even have bad spirits to come and bother me. I am alone in my own thoughts and my own feelings. So she sought the world pleasures that are no longer there for her. Only emptiness surrounds her. She sees nothing. Only the eternal aspect of torment is what is following her right now. So there is no physical torture. There are no demons there to torment or condemn her. But she feels the pain of the fact that she was self-centered, that she sought the joys of the earth, in which she realized how empty her life had been. It is not by chance that Joana de Angelis comes to us and brings us a book called Empty Lives, in which she brings us several chapters for us to reflect upon our own existence. And I just wanted to also point out a slide here from the Spirit's book that Allan Kardec brought a very important question to give even more emphasis on what we are talking about here today, because he asked the benevolent spirits, in order to be pleasing to God and to ensure our future situation, is it enough simply not to do what is evil, meaning not to do what is good, not to do what is bad? Even if I'm not doing anything good, isn't it enough that I'm not doing anything bad either? No, all must do good to the best of their abilities, for all will answer for all the evil that has resulted from the good that they left undone. Basically, if I could summarize in my own word, I could say, if I could have done something in my existence that could have prevented a negative situation from arriving either at myself or someone else, then I am complicit with it. I am somewhat responsible for the situation that is happening, especially when we have others who are immediately by our care, by our example, the ones that are living, watching us closely, that were entrusted upon us prior to reincarnation. And I'm not talking about only kids. I'm talking about anyone who may be following us closely. So Joana de Angelis comes in this book to us, and she'll start off by saying that despite the infinite varieties of ideals and attitudes regarding moral elevations, we as human beings have emptied ourselves of the desire to serve others. She says this. Well, isn't this a little drastic? Well, let's look at humanity. Let's look at what is happening in the world today, right? Let us just take a glimpse and see if what she's saying is correct. She states, they are in a phase of morbid laziness and are only interested in strong sensations. At the same time, disturbed individuals attuned, in sync with spiritually terrible, horrible, evil spirits, they are urging the young people to commit suicide after having led them into the tragic behaviors resulting from not having found the meaning of existence. So let me say this again. I got to read it so that it doesn't lose its power. At the same time, disturbed individuals, attuned spiritually, in connection, in affinity, in sync to horrible perverse spirits, urge young people to commit suicide after having led them into tragic behaviors resulting from not having found the meaning of existence. So I'm going to cite one example that is very drastic today, but just to show the power of the teenagers and the young adult with social media and all of the technologies that we have available today that speaks exactly about this here, urging young people to commit suicide. One of the cases we have here that we can watch is that documentary on Netflix, The Social Dilemma. And we can understand a little bit about that, on how social media has the impact really of leading the young mind, the young adult to commit suicide, because it leads them to be in contact, in tune with the below order spirits, the evil one, if we want to call them this way, the tormented ones who are finding the affinity with their troubled souls. And then we find another one, which was the case of the young lady who was able to, through text messages, convince her then boyfriend to commit suicide because he had not found the meaning of his existence. And she would talk to him as if trying to help him, that if he had found no existence at all, no meaning to his existence at all, that the only way, the only solution was to seek suicide as the answer to his troubled life. And when we look at the power of the internet, because now I'm going to dive into the chapter that she brings, which is called Fun and Frivolous Activities. And I'm going to get into that in a little bit. But she's going to say this in the book to us so we can analyze it further. She says, finding existential meaning and discovering how to deal with it is a powerful reason to live. And it is an indispensable endeavor to be offered to children and the young people. So the other day, we were talking about this. If more young adults, if more children would be offered the reasons, the powerful reasons to find to live, to start believing in oneself, to start realizing that there is life outside of the little screen, that there are things that we can do that provides harmony, that provides joy, that provides a movement of putting perhaps them in contact with others' sufferings, or with nature, or with wholesome activities that could lead the young mind, even of the young adult, to believe that there is something greater for them at hand. And of course, some might say, well, it's really hard. You know, my son is now at an age where nothing I can say is going to have an impact. Indeed, nothing you can say, but perhaps the continuous leading by example might just do that. And the seed that was planted before might just have found eventually, might just have found the ability, the room to grow and blossom into something greater. So she continues, adults victimized by the torments of emptiness need to be stimulated to awaken to their reality as immortal spirits, to the destiny that awaits them, and to the effort to be undertaken to be victorious. Empty lives are the effects of the social accommodations and the extreme behaviors that delude the poorly led masses. What is it, some of the torments that might come to try to stimulate us to awaken to our reality as immortal spirits? If adults are victimized by the torments of emptiness that need to be stimulated to awaken to their reality as immortal spirits, we could say that the torment in itself, the pain in itself, is something that is going to jolt them, to awaken them to their immediate reality. She says the effort that they're going to need to be victorious. So she comes to us and says, while many of us fall in this accommodated society, right, where there's really nothing going on in there, where I am just living day by day, that I'm preoccupied with things that are leading me to emptiness and not really something that is fulfilling, that is adding to my spiritual reality, my immortal self. Life in itself is going to come and offer me sometimes very painful situations to jolt me awake and say, hey, wake up, it's time for you to move. Get out of the social accommodations, extreme behaviors that is not only leading your own life towards a path that is not so victorious, like the case of August, Michelle, and Claire, but also leading others that may be following you. So the question is, what can we do? I always think about a friend that I have that, she's very practical. She comes and says, we need to bring the practicality of Spiritism so that we know what to do. So it doesn't stay only on theory, right? That we need to really think about what is it that we can do. So Joana de Angelis comes and she offers us the solution, if you will, for the troubles. And here she's going to state, as a result of the immense social chaos that has affected so many existences, the doctrine of Jesus has resurfaced as a type of emergency psychotherapy to fulfill the mental time and space with deep reflections concerning the existence itself, diluting the psychic anesthetic that now nourishes them. This is very powerful, wouldn't you say? She comes to us and she talks about the doctrine of Jesus resurfacing. And of course, she's talking about Spiritism as this promised counselor that is coming back in the presence of a psychotherapist to try to fill our mental time, our mental space with reflections concerning our existence itself. But in order for us to allow that to happen, much like we would when we go to a psychotherapist or a psychiatrist or a psychologist, or we do family constellation or whatever it is that we seek in order to find mental harmony, she's talking about setting some time aside to study and reflect upon the message that is coming to try to arrive and delude this anesthetic that is actually what is nourishing us, what is allowing us to fall into this social accommodation that we seem to have fallen under. So she would say, one of the ways or other ways that this can happen is in realizing that if we take an interest in others, in trying to help them, not only are we going to help them with their personal growth towards constructing a plentiful type of lifestyle for themselves, but also for oneself. Because when we put ourselves and we remove ourselves from that self-centeredness, like Clara was, we have this ability to provide for ourselves a moment where we are renewing our own life's objectives. How many people have tried to reflect, what is it that I can do to try to make things better for myself? And then I thought about Albert Schweitzer, who came to us in a very powerful phrase. It's something that I never forget, in which he states, I don't know what your destiny will be, but one thing I know, the only ones among you who will be really happy are those who will have sought and found how to serve. So he's talking exactly about the aspect of charity, of living one's life in accordance with love for one's neighbor. Seems to be very outdated, no? I mean, 2000 years, more than 2000 years ago, that was a great commandment, the last type of uh, urgent plea from Christ, that we love one another as he loved us. Seems simple enough. So why is it that more people are seeking or falling into this self-centeredness, where they're unable to see others' sufferings, thus leading an empty life, feeling like they don't have a purpose or an objective? Why is it? Why is this happening? And I was having a conversation, and please don't do this. This is not the solution, maybe for you, maybe it might be, I'm not sure. But let's talk a little bit about this wholesome organization, Fraternity Without Borders, in which is led by this man, Wagner, and his wife, Clarissa. They're now living in Africa. They sought this type of lifestyle in which they found that there could be no happiness, no fraternity, no peace, no love, unless they themselves were of service to others. And they found fulfillment. They weren't seeking to run away from their troubles. They were seeking to find fulfillment of their existence. Or maybe they weren't seeking, it just led them there. But I know of people that have gone in this excursion to be hands-on of service, embracing the little ones, picking the corns off the field, cleaning, working with the women to do the nourishment and the feeding time. And they come back changed. They've come back seeing life in a whole other way. I mean, this is very significant. What is it about charity that moves the very particles of our being so that we are completely transformed? What is it? Well, Stephen Post answer that question when he launches a book called Do Good, Feel Good. And he actually talks about the chemical that happens in our brain when we do something good, and it goes through the reward process within our brain and tells us that when something is good, we want to do it again. We want to repeat that action because perhaps that divine spark is receiving those tiny blows in which eventually it's going to ignite into a huge flame, like it happened with St. Francis of Assisi and so many others. And you might say, yeah, but you're talking about Francis of Assisi. You're talking about Albert Schweitzer. You're talking about Mother Teresa. I'm talking about you and I. I'm talking about you and I. I'm talking about the difference that we can make. And it doesn't have to be on that scale. It could be a smaller scale. It could be a smaller scale. A drop in the ocean is still water, it's still a drop. Imagine thousands and thousands of drops of charity in the immense ocean that is in need of souls that are truly engaged in understanding the objective of life, which is to serve that which is going to bring happiness, right? So Joana de Angelis, she brings us these chapters in which it makes us reflect about time, the time that we have in our hands. A lot of people, when they're in their deathbed, when they're sick, when they're faced with the reality that I might die tomorrow, and they start pondering about their immortality, that's when they start reflecting on the infinite worth of time. Emmanuel, in the book, The Way, the Truth, and the Life, I forget the chapter, he says that there are thousands, and perhaps even you and I, who misuse the gift of time, believing that this blessing that we received are owed to us by God, which in reality is an investment. He talks about how people might say, I'm just killing time, and they don't really reflect upon how powerful and true that statement is, just killing time, wasting it. The awareness of this fact alone should start working to make us have a view about our times a little bit different. He says there are those also who live their lives in such a way, seeking the immediate material pleasures of the world, that they are going to say time is money. It's interesting, right? And Emmanuel says later on they're going to start realizing that their uncompleted undertaking on the ladder of reincarnation is more valuable than they thought when they were saying time is money and I'm just going to go after that, which is going to give me, security. Not to say that it's not okay. Yeah, we should seek a life through the law of labor where we're going to work, provide for ourselves, make a change or some type of impact on society with what we do. But time is money is something that we should be thinking about, right? People do undo, build, they tear, but do they take into account the learning time they have available for them? Or are they going to need to recapitulate all of this matters in a future reincarnation? Thinking about Claire, wasted time is what I had. So I must say to you that to me, the study hit really hard, as I think it should. Any of us that if we really have the courage to embark on some of the readings, and so we're going to start finalizing our study with these beautiful message that she brings us in the book, which is called Fun and Futilities. And Joana de Angelis brings us some pointers, as in we need emotional balance, inner silence to reflect. She asks us how many uplifting books we have read in the last month. She says, of all that you plan to do, what have you managed to accomplish? And then she leaves another question. She says, how many letters and uplifting conversations have you exchanged with troubled people who need you? Right? Those are all very important questions that she brings here, because she says, with the acquisition of all the scientific resources, all that life has given us because of the scientific advancements, superior technology, things that we couldn't dream possible 20 years ago, and now we do, right? Which is responsible for changing the way that we think, the way that we coexist with each other, that brings well-being and the satisfaction, the pleasure that we derive from such type of achievements. What have we done with it, really? What do we do with it, really? So she brings us the aspect of technology. And please don't shoot the messenger, okay? Not me, not her, not Divaldo. It's a fact. And it makes us reflect. So here's what she says. Because of all the superior technology that we have available today and all the resources and technology advancements that we have, people waste useful time that should be invested in meaningful accomplishments, which are pushed into the background, people lose their fascination for what is elevated to the irrelevance of futility. Kind of tough, right? But remember, Joana de Angelis is an educator. She says, the search for what is new, for instant information, fragments the mind and alters its capacity for reasoning, for reflection. It decreases the time that one should be utilizing, dedicated to meditation regarding the serious commitments made in the beyond. Of course, some of the amusement that we find in technology is harmless and pleasant. Nevertheless, it becomes an addictive need. Try taking away your child's tablet and see what happens. Grounding a teenager with no internet connection and sees what happens. She says, and I'm talking about teenagers, right? Now I'm talking about young adults here. She says, make time for your entertainment and useful activities, sure, but free yourself a little bit from the magic machine for the sake of your emotional life. Seek personal contact, human coexistence. In just a moment, for just a moment, free yourself from the virtual and return to the experience, the real, the everyday, the human, the warmth of presence, and the exchange of bodily energies. Leave the cold machine. Leave. Don't do it now so that I can finish the message. Just wait until I'm done. But this is what she's saying. Just for a moment. This is why I love sometimes when we have hurricane season. I know it's awful, but it's the one time you see kids outside playing. It's the one time because there's no electricity and you can't use the tablets because you need to be connected to find out what's happening. So a lot of times parents will say, don't use that. We need the battery life for emergencies or have you. It's when neighbors get together because the neighbor has a gas barbecue and they share and they allow others to also utilize, to cook together, to eat together. Isn't it interesting how a turmoil situation such as a hurricane allows people to coexist? The warmth of presence, the real, the everyday. You need emotional balance. You need inner silence, time to reflect, she says. Make a sincere analysis of your recent behavior in relation to the time you spend on something useful. This is why she asks, let's go back here. She says, make a sincere reflection on the time you have taken or spent on something useful. How many uplifting books have you read in the last month? You're going to say, well, I didn't have time or the willingness to read. And this is what she said. And that is correct, because you were busy with virtual frivolities. Oh my God, when I read this, I said, my goodness. So she goes on to say, she says, think of all that you plan to do and all that you have managed to accomplish and you haven't done it. Perhaps you were too tired. However, that was not the natural state of doing nothing or time badly spent, was it? How many letters and uplifting conversations have you exchanged with troubled people in need? You were likely unavailable at such times because you were browsing the virtual social media sites. And since your head was in the clouds, literally, you had not yet digested even a part of the information. So she says, apply your knowledge and potential more wisely. Enrich your life, and your emotional harmony is going to come. Stop the childish game of curiosity regarding the lives of others. You know, People magazine, the Kardashians, this or that. Who cares? That's not what she said, but she says, stop the childish game of curiosity regarding their greatness and their miseries and spend time thinking about your own. You have serious commitments to attend to. That's the spirit of someone who doesn't have time to waste. I have serious, she doesn't say serious, she says very serious commitments to attend to. The world is in agony. And human beings, some senseless, others uncivilized, other nobles, are learning on their way to the grave, not knowing when their time is going to come to an end. So she says, reorganize your mental plans so that your intellectual potential is truly connected to the generous sources of wisdom and transcendent love that feed the spiritual being that you are. Rejoice, entertain yourself, sure, but don't put off your spiritual duties under any pretext whatsoever. You originated in the light of love, and you are advancing in that sublime direction. I'm going to make sure that I put this here in a comment because I think we need to remember this. And a lot of us spend our lives sometimes feeling like our lives are empty because we forget exactly this that I'm placing right here. You originated in the light of love, and you are advancing in that sublime direction. So don't waste the opportunity to spread light. And never let anyone leave your company without taking some of it off, some of the burden of them off, so that they may not lose their way. Appreciate the gift of technology. It's what facilitates our existence today, that promotes new pathways for evolution. But she says, don't forget, however, that your physical presence, your direct and personal contribution achieve miracles in the relationship and the lives of one another. So take some time away from the magical, machine. Social life needs us. It's the law of society that is calling us to be with each other, aligned with the law of progress. And a lot of people are in need of us right now. We all have something to give. She goes on to finish her message stating, where am I? There we go. She says, the whole gospel of Jesus is a hymn of beauty, of hope, of edification and tenderness, benefiting the world. He said, follow me, and I will make you fishers of men and women. Take the net of entertainment and cast it to the human ocean, the net that achieves the savings of life. The message is very profound and is very beautiful because it's basically coming to us that shows that our lives can only be fulfilled when we are in the moment of charity and of serving others. We are going to attend to our day-to-day activities. We're going to go to work. We have our family. We have our home to take care of. We have our social obligations. We are men and women who are in the world. We are not of it. We don't belong to it. So the desire for immediate material pleasures, this is something that we need to reflect on how we are dealing with our existence, what we are seeking. And a lot of times people say, I don't even know where to begin. Well, begin with small things. Maybe a friend that you used to encounter who used to be sad very often. Maybe a phone call to see how he or she is doing out of the blue. Maybe a prayer and meditation reflection at the moment that we are living right now to see maybe I can be of service. And if so, where? And intuition might just come our way. Maybe we can go online and search how we can help in shelters, animal shelters, maybe nursing homes. Maybe we can apply to be a big brother, a big sister. I remember that when I was a young person. I remember my neighbor had a big brother because he had a very bad life. So there is so much that we can do. But if we say that our work entails all of the time that we are connected, at least let's see how we can be of service even while doing that. Maybe throwing sentences of books that we love that may just encourage other people, maybe uplifting, encouraging messages as opposed to posting and reposting tragic news, political news that are not going to be really feeding anyone else's day because it's available to anyone to read. It's not like we don't have accessibility to that. But how many people have accessibility to the message of the gospel and the message of spiritism, right? That we can throw out and throw that net and cast it to the human ocean to see who is in need of a wholesome, beautiful, enlightening message that day. Let us reflect upon our lives, our existence, and how we are living it. For we don't know when tomorrow is going to come. And we don't want to be like Michelle or Claire, who arrived in the spirit plane feeling so desperate, so tormented with how they arrived at it, thinking they had led empty lives, and considering how long it was going to take for them to have a new opportunity at reincarnation yet again. On that mind, I'm going to throw back at my friend Marcos so that he can finish our morning for us.
Thank you, Andrea, for such a very deep and in grave alert to all of us, right? There's a lot of comments from our friends here. Grateful for the reminders or the wake up calls. It's very, very important. And I had a personal question for you because I feel at times with that, very precise term that Joanna described that you mentioned, right? That psychic anesthetic that really make us numb to what's going on around and inside us, and it really just kills the precious time that we have and the opportunities of service that we have. But I believe you described it so many things that we can do to start, our journey out of that state, right? I don't know if there's anything else you want to complement, but I think you cover quite a bit.
Yeah, I think we all have to be careful that it doesn't become the refuge, right? I mean, that we run away from that which is causing us pain. And because a lot of teenagers do that when they don't have friends, when the only friendship they have is in the control. They're very shy, or they have a very low self-esteem. They feel like they can't go out in the world and have, and even adults that are, that's the only type of relationship that they have. I think it's something that we all face one way or another. Like when you're in a very, painful moment, you want to turn on Netflix and just kind of, binge watch something because it's going to take our mind off of things for a while. But unless we have the courage to really look at it and seek assistance to help us deal with it, it's always going to be there, right? It's an anesthetic, but it's not. It's just temporary. So I think we all have the same problem, and perhaps this is why I chose that chapter because it's for me for first and foremost. Which one of us are not really in that type of lifestyle? I think it's amazing. The other day, I had a friend, and I said, "My God, I called you all day." She said, "Oh, I left the phone at home." I said, "You forgot?" She said, "No, I left it at home." Right? I mean, that's amazing to detach itself to the
Mhm.
point where you're enjoying nature and your family and your friends, and you're not really, you're just going to allow yourself that one day. And several others who disconnected from Facebook and Instagram because they were just too distracted. They couldn't do their work. And it is like kind of cutting an addiction. It really is. You're addicted. You want to see how many likes you got. You want to see how many shares you had. You want to see how many people, commented on your post. You do. You want to see that. But why? And what is that fulfilling in reality, right? What are we seeking to fulfill really? Because there is a pain that needs to be attended to. So, I'm
Mhm.
with you, Marcos. I don't have uh, the solution, but according to Joanna, the only solution really is allowing yourself at least an hour a day to meditate and reflect upon our lives and existence because out of 24 hours, 1 hour is nothing. And that could be accomplished while we are walking, doing our exercise, while we are doing our, contemplating of nature. If we want to do some yoga to try to, if it's something that works, for us, we should do that. If it's helping at an animal shelter because playing with puppies and kittens is something, anything that
Mhm.
takes it away from that which is bringing a lot of pressure. Our work today is something that naturally keeps us connected all of the time, unless you are a nurse or, you are always connected. Not you, like us, right?
Yeah.
I work with books. I'm always connected. I'm always reading. I'm always in front of the screen. And sometimes it gets tired and your brain is fried. So you need some time for yourself. Because the thing is, the psychic anesthetic is also going to contribute to illnesses that we don't even see it coming. And all of a sudden, we have this pain here, we have this pain there. And I truly believe that carpal tunnel is God's way of saying, step away from the machine because it's hurting, it's inflamed, go do something else. So we need to be very mindful of what our needs are and our inevitable immortality, inevitable future life, right? So,
Well, do we have time for one question here, Andrea? There's a question
all
from
right.
Mackenzie.
Yeah.
Um, it's about books in general. These days, having ebooks make it easier for us to have access to them. Is there any intent of publishing this and other Joanna books in ebook format, which is not there
All,
yet?
yeah, all of them in a couple of months, Mac, is going to be are going to be available. We We actually released a Sowing of Love a few weeks ago. And next week, we're going to be releasing a Full Life, which is of the same series of Empty Lives. So Joanna comes back last year and offers us a full life so that we can also start getting other solutions on how to live a more fulfilled life. And that's going to be available too. Little by little, we're going to get there. What is lacking is some of the financial contributions and donations and selling of books so that we can get enough to get it done. But yeah, they'll be available.
Thanks, Andrea. Thanks, Mackenzie, for the question. For those interested in the book Empty Lives, we posted the link to the Our Publisher right below, so check it out. Andrea, with that said, thanks again. Would you like to do the final prayer for us, please?
Sure. I was going to say, may the fourth be with you and you do it, but I'll do it.
Yeah.
And let us utilize these final moments that we have and thank God for the time that we still have available to reflect upon all of these lessons that come to the spirit plane, these messengers of Christ who, out of love, always try to come to us in the spirit plane through mediums like Divaldo Franco and others, bringing us messages that warn us, that guide us, so that we won't again be caught in saying, I didn't know any better. We know that with these warnings, there also comes encouragement, consolation, and hope. For we know that if we are receiving them, we are also able to, through the virtues and qualities and strength of our souls, overcome that which has held us back so many times before. We are so very grateful for our spirit guides, mentors, guardian angels, who are with us always, taking care of us and assisting us and our family members as they too struggle with the vicissitudes of life, so characteristic of a world of trials and expiations. Yet we see how blessed we are for having been reincarnated at a time of transition. This in itself shows us how much strength we have within. Help us remind ourselves of that always, and give us always the tight tugs at our ears, reminding us of our immediate responsibilities. Even when we find ourselves discouraged, without energy, feeling as if we can just leave this and put it out for another day, please insist and keep coming to our aid and saying, get up and do it now. Now it's the time. And don't waste it, for we don't know when tomorrow might come. Stay with us always, dear Jesus, and so be it.
So be it. Thank you, Andrea. Thank you, everyone, for being with us. As Andrea said, may the light, may the force be with you. Have a blessed week ahead, and see you next time.
Bye, you guys.
Bye, all.